Hello there. We're going to be talking about how our district began to implement literacy instruction for all students, and specifically targeting our students who may have been previously excluded from traditional literacy instruction. So this may be our students with complex communication needs, students who are in a life skills program, or non-speaking students or minimally speaking students. So we just wanted to share a little bit about what that looked like in our district. And our hope is that through collaboration and discussions and presentations like this, we can work together to get literacy instruction for all students across school districts. So first, we want to just introduce you to who we are. I am Allie Barwise, and I am part of the Bellevue School District Assistive Technology team, and I'm a speech pathologist by trade. And I have my colleague here that I'll introduce herself as well.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sarah Ayers, and I am also a speech language pathologist by trade and a member of the Bellevue School District Assistive Technology team.
And we just have this passion for literacy instruction that Sarah and I have really connected on, and that's why we've really taken it as an initiative in our district. And we just really think it's so important for our students who are often excluded to be included, and what that can look like for each student and school district. For today, we're going to talk about what comprehensive literacy for all is and why it's important. We may be, preaching to the choir about why literacy instruction is important, but we want to tie this into the discussion about how we chose to approach this initiative. And it's always just important to come back to the why of it all. And then we have some case studies, examples that highlight the change in approach for some students, and also what group instruction could look like in the classroom. And then we want to talk a little bit about some of the steps that we took and next steps that we're hoping to take. So hopefully this is something that can be replicated or changed or improved upon or modified for other districts and individuals, which leads us into our next slide, where we kind of talk about who this presentation might be for. And we really see this as being helpful, we hope, for people who are interested in supporting the rollout of a literacy for all type initiative in their overall school district, or maybe just in a specific building they work in, or maybe with just some individual students that you work with. So Sarah and I are AT specialists, and we're kind of attacking this from the district level. But we also have, the success that we've had came from starting points of one student, one SLP, and it grows from there. So we're hoping that this can be valuable for people like AT specialists, special education teachers, therapists, school administrators, and we hope that you're able to kind of adapt and take what might be helpful and put it into your specific circumstances. Our learning objectives for the day are to we're hoping that the participants will understand the importance of literary instruction for all students. We're hoping that in sharing our process, it will help you all be able to identify key stakeholders that you can include in these discussions to try to support that rollout effort. And hope that you're able to take some of these ideas and identify a next step that you might be able to do in your setting.
All right, so let's kick off kind of the meat of this webinar with a really quick overview, just to make sure we're all on the same page about what is comprehensive literacy for all before we kind of dive into more specifics about rolling out this instruction and the work in our Bellevue School District. So the quotes you see here on this slide and all of this introduction information comes directly from the book Comprehensive Literacy for All, which is by Karen Erickson and David Copenhaver. And as you see here, emergent literacy is defined as all the reading and writing behaviors and understandings that precede and then eventually develop into conventional reading and writing. And comprehensive emergent literacy instruction consists of a set of experiences designed to enable the development of print knowledge through a variety of meaningful interactions. So emergent literacy explains how even those individuals with the most significant disabilities that we work with can make progress towards becoming independent readers and writers when they're given appropriate supports. And we can look at this, what this instruction looks like a little bit more closely on the next slide. So comprehensive emergent literacy instruction includes a mix of all of the things here. So it's skill development, integrated communication and literacy activities, use of print in meaningful contexts, and purposeful independent exploration of reading and writing tools, materials, and experiences. So when all of this is done really well with good instruction, it will lead students with complex needs to develop print concepts, alphabet knowledge, phonological awareness, language comprehension, and communication skills that eventually will enable them ultimately to benefit from that conventional literacy experience and instruction. And that's a key piece in my mind. We don't want our students to stay kind of stuck in that emergent literacy instruction either. If possible, we want them to move forward to that more conventional instruction. And ultimately, this will help students identify themselves personally as readers and writers and recognize the power of literacy and symbolic communication, and then motivate themselves to continue learning, which is the ultimate goal.
So when we talk about the why of literacy for all, we really want to make sure that every student has the opportunity in the high quality instruction that Sarah's talking about, because they deserve that opportunity, and we can't be gatekeepers to their ability to learn to read and write. And as this quote says, if we don't think that they are capable, it will become that self-fulfilling prophecy where they won't be able to, because they won't be given the opportunity, they won't be given that high quality instruction, and our students can really feel beliefs around their abilities from their instructors. And I love this quote from Janice Light where she talks about how important literacy instruction is for educational, employment, and social opportunities for our students and their overall ability to participate in society. So, and we want to make sure that they're developing their independent voice, because we know from our adult AAC users and our skilled AAC users that you can never truly be novel without access to that keyboard and being able to read and write your messages as well. Because we, as comprehensive and as robust as a communication application can be, we can't ever put all of the vocabulary into that system. We know that these high-end adult AAC users use about 80 to 85% of symbols in symbol sequences, and they really rely on spelling and word prediction for the rest of that communication. And this is really important as well when we think about high-stakes situations where individuals really need to be able to advocate for themselves and for their own safety. So if we're thinking about the need to document abuse of our AAC users, they need to be able to, this probably won't be programmed within their system. So it really just allows them all of these additional opportunities to really be those full participants in society. And so when we're looking at why we saw the need in our school district, we really took some time and observed across the district and listened to concerns from teachers and therapists and pulled together some common threads that got us moving on this initiative. And some of the things that we were seeing, sometimes we saw teachers not presuming potential. So as 2 slides ago, the quote talking about that self-fulfilling prophecy, we need to believe in our students that they do have the ability to learn to read and write. We saw a lot of sight word instruction, which could be just sight word instruction or potentially even matching activities that were being called sight word instruction. So matching pictures to words or pictures and words to pictures and words. We also had some students who were learning to read and write despite having ever been given formal instruction on this. And similarly, those students, sometimes we are seeing them at later grades and later ages where their educators are reporting that they're readers, but when we really hone in on what some of their skills are, we see that they're doing sight word reading, but don't have those foundational phonics skills. And so we know that you can only hold so many sight words in your head. You're going to max out on that ability. You need the blended skills of being able to have those phonics and decoding abilities as well. We also got a lot of questions from teachers about how to instruct students who have complex communication needs, are non-speaking, use augmentative and alternative communication. And they recognized the importance of literacy instruction, but just weren't really sure how to implement it because they had always been given these traditional models where the students are required to produce verbal productions to demonstrate their knowledge. And overall, as a school district, we have a greater focus on inclusion. And so there's a need to figure out ways to allow our students to be able to engage with the general ed curriculum and be able to do the same work that their peers are doing.
Yeah, so the observations that Ali just outlined in the previous slide were years and years in the making. I remember conversations with special ed teachers from really early in my career where we were problem solving how to assess and instruct letter sound correspondence and some of these other foundational literacy skills for our non-speaking students. And at the time, we were sometimes programming letters into devices, but depending on the device or the app, they didn't even all allow for digitized recording. So sometimes it was just letter names instead of sounds, which, like Ali had mentioned, kind of led to those matching exercises instead of true literacy instruction. So while some people we were questioning and wondering, myself included, we didn't yet have the tools or the understanding of what exactly to do. And it wasn't until more recently, like around 2019 or 2020, that we really started to dive into this idea of comprehensive literacy for all. So all this to say, it's okay if you and other people around you aren't doing this work yet, because it's never too late to start. And so what we want to do right now is kind of take you on a short journey of our work in our district for the past 2 or 3 years and show you what we've done so far, and also all the work that we still have yet to do in the future. So we somewhat arbitrarily divided up the work we've done into 5 overall categories. And having said this, we want to give the caveat that this work is not completely linear in nature, despite what this slide shows. So take it with a grain of salt. And what you'll see on this slide is kind of an overview of these 5 stages. And then on the next few slides, we'll talk a little bit more about each in depth. And you might notice as we go through the slides that we intentionally bolded the names of various stakeholder groups that we worked with, just to bring your attention and awareness to those groups so that you might consider involving them in your work in your respective districts and buildings. So stage 1 is what we're calling identification and education. And primarily this stage involved observing what was currently being done in our district. And as Ali talked about before, most of the literacy instruction that we did see happening for our non-speaking students was that sight word reading and those matching types of goals. And later today, we'll take you through a couple of case studies where we'll highlight goals as they were written previously and show you how we are reworking them and rewriting them from this comprehensive literacy lens. So right around the time that we were observing and wondering, Bellevue School District started putting a greater emphasis on inclusion. And this was also right around the time that book, Comprehensive Literacy for All, came out. So it was kind of the perfect storm of all of the pieces lining up in place. After we identified the need, we began reviewing the book and attending conferences, listening to podcasts, and seeking out other avenues to educate ourselves on emergent literacy instruction, which then takes us to stage 2. So naturally, after educating ourselves, it was time for us to spread the word to anyone and everyone who was interested and who would listen to us. We started by leading professional development courses to very narrow specific groups of folks, such as our SLP group. And just as we were really excited about this work, so too were some of our SLPs, specifically those who worked in buildings who had like a larger percentage of AAC users within their building. So we linked arms with those, what we call, the early adopters, and we started to talk more specifically about how this work could be carried forward with some of the students on their caseloads in their schools. And there were a couple SLPs who were ready to jump in with both feet. So we started by supporting the efforts of those early adopters. And then a key part too is showcasing the work that they were doing. So we did some of the showcasing through our conversations with other SLPs in the district. We would highlight what was happening in other buildings in case they weren't aware of it. Also in our monthly AAC group and our monthly AAC newsletters. And we just found it was really helpful for other therapists and teachers across the district to see that this work was being done and that they were starting to have some success. Those early adopters were feeling more confident, and then the other SLPs started feeling more confident and energized and wanting to replicate some of the work in their own buildings as well. So I'd say overall, the key part of the work at this stage was starting small, running with the runners, and showcasing the work of those early adopters with the hope that the excitement would be contagious and start to build across the district. Stage 3 was then recognizing the need for a systematic instruction around foundational literacy skills. So teachers and therapists wanted to work on specific skill building like letter sound correspondence, sound blending, and phoneme segmentation, but we're sometimes unsure of the best way to do that specifically with our non-speaking population. So after reviewing some options, we landed on accessible literacy learning as a basic curriculum that we wanted to use to instruct this very specific cohort of students who were unable to access their gen ed curriculum as it was designed. So after researching and landing on all, we met with our direct special ed supervisor as well as a director of teaching and learning to explain the need for this curriculum. And then through that process, we also learned our district procedures for adoption of a new curriculum. And ultimately, we determined the best way to purchase it with their blessing, of course. And because this was something we wanted to use, we did not want to use as a replacement for gen ed curriculum. We decided that we could consider it a supplementary curriculum, which meant that this whole process moved a little more quickly than had we had to go through a formal curriculum adoption process. And once we demonstrated the need to the directors and we advocated for its adoption, we found funding for the all curriculum, and it actually was paid for out of our general curriculum budget. So to start off, we purchased kits for schools that had heavier loads of AAC users. So in our district, that looked like the functional life skills programs, the buildings with those programs, as well as our schools that are deemed inclusionary pilot program schools. And after purchasing the curriculum, we quickly recognize that training and implementation of this shouldn't necessarily live with us within our assistive technology department. So we decided to move forward with a train the trainer type of model. We trained the special ed coaches so that they too were aware of this new curriculum and that hopefully they could begin to take ownership over some of the future training that would be needed in their school buildings. And then luckily, one of our coaches has a background and a special interest in literacy. So we were excited that we could capitalize on her interest to then continue to support the rollout too. Now, stage 4 is when it started to get fun for us. This is when more early adopters beyond just the SLP group or in partnership with the SLPs in their buildings began to work on comprehensive literacy instruction in buildings kind of sprinkled across the whole district. So on the next slide, we're going to show some examples of what this looked like at this stage. So here are the examples. And again, this was happening in different buildings across the district. So teachers and SLPs in 2 buildings began developing alternative pencils for their students. In our AT department, we had made a couple examples of what these pencils could look like, and we shared those out so that they could replicate it with their students. But teachers were really creative too. So I had one teacher in a building who was using a partner-assisted scanning with a student who got a black or dark-colored whiteboard and bright markers, which supported his CVI needs. So again, just being creative in the application of some of this instruction. And then in a middle school building, that early adopter coach that I had mentioned started running small groups of students through the new all curriculum. We also had a paraeducator make some adapted literacy materials to support the curriculum using boom cards. And at the same time, some early adopter SLPs began partnering with teachers to rewrite those literacy goals, again, moving away from sight word instruction and matching to more revised foundational literacy skills. And finally, we met with groups of teachers to give them their copies of the all curriculum. And then we started to kind of talk and begin to problem solve how they might consider revising their instruction. So finally, this is where we live right now. We're in stage 5 in our district. And overall, generally speaking, this is just the continued expansion and rollout of the skills and strategies, as well as deeper integration with other departments across the district who can help further the support and support our mission. So what this looks like is further collaboration. So for example, we're meeting with English language arts curriculum developers and LAP teachers, which it stands for Learning Assistance Program teachers, to problem solve literacy assessment and instruction. So for example, how we could adapt that gen ed DIBELS assessment for our non-speaking or minimally speaking students. And we'll talk about that some more in a little bit. We also continue to partner with special ed coaches to talk through those specific building needs and concerns, which sometimes might be adaptation of the physical materials, or thinking through the best way to roll out the all curriculum in their building. So whether that's using the physical materials or using an app on an iPad. We also have Clicker 8 this year that's newly available as a district-wide support. So we're doing some work to train staff to use this program and using it with all of our students as a universal support, but also we recognize that it's really helpful for our students with special needs as well. And finally, we recently showcased some of this work in collaboration at a large teaching and learning meeting with the hope that this would increase the visibility of our department and that we could use this as leverage and as a way to open general educators' minds to see that the unique needs of some of the students that we support.
Now we're going to hop into some of these case study examples. We have two types of case studies we're going to share. So we have some individual case studies where we want to just detail a little bit about the progression from previous reading instruction and what that looks like with the adoption of foundational reading skills as IEP goals. And we also have a case study example of implementing this within a classroom setting. So demonstrating that transition from independent IEP work to what this writing workshop could look like using predictable chart writing. So our first case study is a little boy in elementary school. And we started working with him when he was 6 years old, and he was in kindergarten in a life skills classroom at one of our elementary schools. The student has autism and he uses limited speech output and has some exposure to high-tech AAC for supplemental, but he's actually doing really well now, starting with some typing and using orthographic representation within the AAC system. But when we first met him, we did some assessing of his literacy skills to try to figure out which goals to go with, and he demonstrated knowledge of all of his letter names, all of the letter sounds, and he was reading familiar sight words. When we looked at some of the skills, he was not yet demonstrating the skill of sound blending, decoding, or segmenting of phonemes. So this is where we decided to focus on for him. And you can see this is a picture of him working on the all curriculum. This is I think probably a sound blending task. I can't tell exactly from the picture. So this was one of his previous goals, and you can see that it was that sight word goal that we often see for our students, where he's having to correctly identify a given sight word from a field of 2. And we really wanted to rework this goal so that he was not just looking at the sight words and memorizing them, because he has a very strong ability to do that, but knowing that that's not going to make him a complete reader. And within a field of 2, he has a 50% chance of getting a lot of these words right. So in a way that we reworked his goal, and there's a lot of text here, we wanted to include the goals just so that you could kind of see the whole thing written out, but I'll kind of summarize what they are. So the first one really is targeting the skill of sound blending. And the way that we do this using the all curriculum is to flip the response expectation to a receptive format. So in traditional literacy instruction, you would have the students, the instructor would produce an elongated production of a word, and you would ask the student to blend it and tell you back what the word is. If the student's not able to do this, you can give them 4 picture choices of minimal pairs, so they're only differing by 1 phoneme. So if the target word is cat, we have a picture of a cat, and then a picture of a bat, which has a different first phoneme, a picture of a cap, like a hat, that has a different last phoneme, and cut has a different middle phoneme. And this is what's so nice about the all curriculum, is that it has all of these visuals, all of these minimal pairs already set up for you. So even if you want to adapt the materials and make them your own or use different pictures, it does all the hard work of actually finding those minimal pairs and getting you going. So he's able to do this in a receptive format and point to the picture. And because they're minimal pairs, he really has to listen to all 3 sounds. He still has a 25% chance of guessing correctly, but it really helps zone into them being able to hear all 3 phonemes and identify the matching picture. And then we also chose to target phoneme segmentation. So similarly, in traditional literacy instruction, you would ask the student to tell you the first sound that they hear in a word. But if they're not able to produce that isolated phoneme due to a number of different reasons, you can again switch it to the receptive format of putting 4 different pictures down that all have a different first phoneme. And they could be similar, like the N and the M we have here in this example, and have them point to the picture of the sound that they hear. Or you produce the sound and they have to point to the picture that starts with that sound. So these are what we worked on with him. And we only, when we look at his progress, he was able to kind of fly through this. And after 7 months of instruction, he was 100% accurate with these skills. And so we then moved on to CVC decoding, which he quickly mastered kind of once he got what we were doing and understood the pattern of expectations and what he was doing. He started to fly through all of this. So he moved quickly through that. And I have an example of what that goal looked like there. Again, is very similar to the sound blending goal. You just put the printed word on the bottom and have him read it, hopefully in his head, and then point to the corresponding picture. And so this student, he's done so fantastic. So at the start of this school year, he's flown through a lot of those foundational reading skills. And so we were able to modify the general ed assessment, which our district uses the DIBELS, to create a plan for his reading moving forward. And this is what Sarah was talking about when she talked about working with the LAP facilitator, because we were able to work with her to adapt the assessment to meet his needs. And I have an example of what that will look like. And this collaboration was so fantastic because as soon as he was assessed with the DIBELS and he started to do really well with some of the different subtests, it immediately triggered everyone's mind of, oh, we should try it with so-and-so next, or we should try it with so-and-so next, or how could we make this even more adapted for students who have some physical limitations as well. So it really helped trigger a wave of excitement around this. And this is what we hope for in rolling out, if the idea Sarah was sharing about starting small, starting with one student and showing the power of it, and then it helps spread it amongst everyone else. And I just wanted to highlight too, when we were doing some of this DIBELS assessment, I was so proud of this student because you could see that he really was internalizing the skill of sounding out words and attacking them from a phonological standpoint instead of just sight words. So we had some of these words that he didn't know, and instead of making up a word or skipping over it, he would try to phonetically sound them out. So for the word new, K-N-E-W, he said canoe. So he sees the K, he does the sound, and it just really shows, he's trying to attack them from that standpoint and not just having only sight words to try to support his reading. So this is an example of what the adapted DIBELS assessment could look like. So on the left, you see a full sheet of paper that has a bunch of nonsense words on it. And what the students are asked to do typically is read as many words as they can in a set amount of time. It's very visually distracting. The time component can be very stressful. And our students sometimes just need a break, come back to it, do one at a time at their own pace. And so what we did to adapt this is move it into the graphic you see on the right, where it's one word at a time presented in a PowerPoint or printed paper. And there we take out the time component. So there's a cutoff score for what is expected of each grade level readers. So it just doesn't matter how quickly he gets there or how many he gets in amount of time, just can he get to that cutoff for the grade expectation in any amount of time. So it's really nice to see how this can be taken out of the standardized format, but still target what they're looking to do. Also within the elementary setting, we have an example of a case study of what it would look like to do the writing workshop using predictable chart writing. So this class was a co-taught section of the class for writing instruction between the speech language pathologist, who you can see here in the picture, and the special education teacher. And for those of you not familiar with predictable chart writing, it goes through a sequence of five days where you make a sentence, you have the sentence strips, you cut up the sentences, the students get to be the sentence, and then they make a book with it. So this group here, the SLP and the teacher, did a fantastic job working together to support this initiative, and they tied it to the general ed themes within the classroom. So for example, the gen ed class was doing a collage project about joy. So they got to talk about the different things they liked. And in creation of these sentences and sentence strips, they were able to add their work to the collage that was displayed in the hallway. And they also had an insect project, so they got to talk about insects. Just a really nice tie between that gen ed curriculum. So here's a nice picture of some of our students doing this predictable chart writing. Up on the top left, you see a student with the cut up sentences, and he's pointing to each one to read each individual word. The student on the top right is also doing that. And you see the picture below that goes across are the three students where they're getting to be the sentence. And it's a little bit hard to see in the picture, but each of them has an individual word that they're holding on to, and they get to move around the classroom to be the sentence themselves. So you can see that there. And then we also wanted to give you a little bit of a case study for a secondary student as well. So we were just highlighting some of the work in the elementary program, and then also wanted to highlight the work in a secondary. So this is a middle school example. And we started working with this student when he was 12 years old and in the 6th grade. The student also has autism, and he has a significant seizure disorder. He has limited speech output and uses AAC to supplement his communication. And French is spoken in the home, and so a lot of his verbal speech is in French as well. So he has access to both languages in his AAC, and the AAC can be really helpful in understanding some of the productions in French that we might not understand. So what initiated this change in his goals came from the parents. And this is something we wanted to highlight as a really helpful technique for helping motivate a team and initiate change, because parent input can really help get teams on board for new things. This mother was a really strong advocate for her student, and she really expressed the desire to target those foundational reading skills because she didn't feel like it had ever been explicitly taught with her student, and really wanted to zone in on that. She happens to be an educator herself, and she has, the quote that we linked below: how can he read if he doesn't know the sounds of the letters? And which really just ties back to what we're hoping to spread the word on. So when we were working with a student, we took this and ran as an in for our first student to start this plan at the middle school, that we are now seeing a lot more students use this curriculum. And so when we looked at baseline, the student was not yet demonstrating the skill of letter sound correspondence. And that's where we really decided to target, mostly because of mom's input as well. So when we look at his previous goal, he had a reading goal that was having him read sentences that had visual supports for each word in the sentence. And this previous goal didn't really consider how verbal speech may be difficult for the student, and that he didn't really demonstrate the skills of being able to read those words independently, even with sight words. So he's really needing to learn the symbol for each word without that support and having a significant cognitive load. So this goal wasn't going very well, as you may expect. And we know that research suggests the blocking effect when we pair words with their symbols. And I think this was just maybe not the most supportive goal for him moving forward in terms of developing those foundational reading skills So what we were able to do is to change that goal to really target that letter sound correspondence. And the instructor is able to produce a letter sound. And then he either has 4 choices of printed letters, or we've done this and you can do it on a keyboard, or you could do it with more choices if you would like. And the student has to identify the letter that the instructor makes the sound for. So again, in traditional literacy instruction, you would point to a letter and say to the student, what does this letter say? And if they're not able to do that, you can flip the format. So I could produce the sound, and he has to find the corresponding letter, still targeting that same skill, still demonstrating the knowledge of letter sound correspondence, but not requiring that verbal response from students. So this student was able to make some really nice progress on this goal. So by the next IEP term, he had mastered 14 out of the 26 letters, and his goal was updated to target the remaining letter sounds. And I do also just want to highlight that it's, he wasn't doing just letter sound correspondence in isolation without also making the connection to actual reading, because it can get really boring to just target letter sound correspondence. This is the letter, this is the letter. We want to show the student why this is important and what it's tied to and the power of reading. So the team was great at also developing goals for decoding some of the letters that he had mastered. We could put those into CVC words. We could put those into short sentences paired with some of the sight words that he was knowing, so that he could start to read these level B texts in supported contexts, so that he can feel that success of, oh, I'm a reader, and that's why it's important to learn these letter sound correspondences, because it's going to help me move on to this. And to Sarah's initial point, the goal of this is so that individuals can see themselves as readers and writers and have that pride in their skills. And so within our district, our speech pathologists often work with the special education teachers as a related service provider, so we can work on goals together. And that's where we've found a lot of success with these initiatives, because I can speak for myself. Last year I had split time between assistive technology and speech language pathology. So I had a caseload of students, and I found the most success when I would volunteer to write the goal for the teacher that we could work on together. And so it really helped get that buy-in. We got a good goal replacement. Everyone's always excited for you to help with some of the data collection and implementation, and get it to be embedded throughout their day, throughout contexts.
Thanks, Sally. It was really helpful to see those student examples, because it just brings to life the work that we've done the last couple of years. But all of this work wasn't, of course, without barriers to overcome. And to be quite honest, we're still working to overcome some of these. I think it takes time, right? So every day we're working to change mindsets. We just had a conversation yesterday with some people in the district about this. And so often this just begins with the need to open educators' minds to the idea of presumed potential first, before we can even do any of this actual work in literacy. Knowledge can be a barrier. And this is a barrier for us as well, because we have a lot of people in the district that we want to teach. And so what we're doing is just continuing to implement that train the trainer model, and then also giving ourselves some grace. So as we'd mentioned before, starting small, running with the runners who are excited about this, starting with them first. And then again, as we mentioned before, just hoping that by showcasing the good work that is being done, that we can excite others to do some of the same. Materials can be a barrier. That kind of sometimes can go together with time as well. We're in the process right now of working with therapists and other educators to brainstorm how we can centralize some of this and then share out the work that we do. So actually just this morning, we're working to put together an interactive PowerPoint with some of the materials from all. And then hopefully once we get sort of a base PowerPoint done, we can share that out and have people just kind of tweak it, but not have to do some of that legwork themselves. Because this relates to the next barrier, time. That's always a barrier across almost everything that we do, right? There's never enough of it. But all we can do is our best. And again, just trying not to reinvent the wheel every time will save time, and centralizing the work and sharing out and collaborating and helping others where we can. But it's all a work in progress.
Yeah, and we just want to also highlight that, as we've been saying, the concept of starting small and seeing where it can grow. We took these initial runners. So at the elementary, those examples were at one elementary school. And now, we started maybe with that one student and that one group. And now we have 6 students with foundational reading goals in their IEPs. And this is compared to, some of the other students, this isn't an appropriate goal for them. They've surpassed that and don't need it at this point. So it's really exciting to see that. I feel that all the students who this is appropriate for have those goals now in their IEPs. And this is similar. That one middle school student was at our school that really had the coach who was invested in literacy as well. And so we've seen that really grow there. So it started with him, and now we're able to we have 10 students there working on the app version of the all curriculum and working on those foundational reading skills with the hope to get them to some of the other conventional reading programs that we have available for our students in district.
And I love that tie, Allie, back to what we talked about in the beginning, where it doesn't start here with the emergent literacy. Our goal is always to get back to that gen ed curriculum. So what's next for us? We hope to continue to expand to include teaching and then again, showcasing all the other aspects of emergent reading and writing instruction. We want to expand to more schools, especially as our district grows in its understanding and acceptance of inclusion. We're going to capitalize on that. And finally, we've really realized and begun to capitalize on our networking and relationship building. I think that's been a focus for us at this school year, the last couple months. And we hope that as we are connecting with more folks in various roles across the district, that they'll continue to share this knowledge with others and share their creative thoughts and ideas with us as well.
And that's also our motivation for sharing with you all today, is that it's not just within the district. We hope to collaborate and partner across districts. And so if any of you all have a success story or ideas or want to have further discussion about it, please reach out to us. Our contact information will be at the end. But we want to hear what else is going on, what other ideas we can implement, other ways to approach this. And so we hope that that collaboration and partnership can also be utilized.
There's a question in the chat. Do we have any materials or resources, any adaptive materials we'd be willing to share? Let us think about that. One thing we are doing is partnering with SETC to help them build out a literacy site that they have been working on. So we will be embedding and sharing some of this with SETC. So stay tuned on that. Allie, do you have anything to add to that before we move on?
I didn't see the exact question in the chat. I don't have the chat up.
Oh, that's okay.
Multiple
that's
screens. Okay. But yeah, I think I encourage too. So if you can get, we always come up against copyright obligations. So the all curriculum is a copyrighted curriculum, but if you can get your district or anyone to be able to purchase one for you, and then you're able to adapt those materials for your students on an individual basis, they can really stretch a long way. Or just getting one and then basing the concepts of it, because it's not anything that's different in terms of how we teach instruction. It just really helps with the visuals and the pairing of some of those phonemes, but also work with your buildings, because a lot of this too is adapting the building-based general ed curriculum. So now, as we were talking about, really launching into the DIBELS assessment, which is what we use, and finding ways to modify that just within PowerPoint and things. So if you're using DIBELS, you can let us know and we can show you some specific PowerPoints that we've adapted for that. But I'm not sure if all schools do the same assessments, but trying to tie into that and finding ways for our students to do it, because then it just really helps bridge that gap to the gen ed curriculum and them being able to kind of pick up with that assessment procedures, even if it's not necessarily the same grade band that they're currently in.
So on this slide, we have some tips for you in case you're interested in getting started or continuing if you're already doing some of this emergent literacy instruction in your district or in your building. These are kind of some of those same themes we've been hitting on all through this. So first of all, just don't get discouraged by how long it takes to make change or how few people are willing to jump on board at first. It just takes one, and it will expand and grow as folks see what's happening and some of the good work that's being done. And kind of along that same note, we've talked about this before, but highlighting the work of your early adopters, there's so much power in that because it shows people that it's possible and they are seeing success. Again, Ali talked about this, offering to support IEP goals for your teachers, helping them write the goal and helping them collect baseline data. As Ali said just a few minutes ago, hardly anyone will say no to help when they're so busy, right? They want our help. So just offer to take over and help with that literacy goal writing and baseline data collection. And then again, just starting with one student in one classroom and then slowly growing to include more students and more classrooms. And I guess just as a main takeaway, you don't have to do it all at once, just do the best that you can. And starting slow is completely okay. We're not saying that all is the be all end all, it's just getting something to these students who previously didn't have very much, basically.
Oh, I didn't realize I had a unmute button. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
I use all curriculum for 2 of my iCase users just because they can't access reading mastery. But I was now trying to get more involved in all of our AAC users. And where I'm on a literacy adoption committee for our district, kind of representing some of our AAC users type kiddos. And so I was just, I have to do a lot of research into what's currently being used. And I'm just now beginning those steps. And I love all, but I'm not sure if I can justify the switch yet and how, what's wrong with reading mastery. So, so I need to do that deep dive.
Yeah, and they all have their pros and cons. Like we were saying, the all is just something that one tool that we chose to go with, and it's incomplete too. It goes through first letter phoneme segmentation, but doesn't go to medial and final. And so all of them need additional supplementation and individualization, as we know, because our students need that. And so, they might have the 4 picture choices right there, but we might need to cut it all up and move it into an eye gaze board or different things like that. And it sounds like you're using the app for these eye gaze users, and the app is fantastic in a lot of ways. And in other ways, I really struggle with it to wrestle it into doing what I want it to do sometimes. So it has some of the limitations as well, but we like the combination of having access to the app, but also the low-tech materials that we can have a little bit more customization over and able to kind of pace it and really provide that instruction.
Yeah,
well.
I was thinking that as well. Like I'm not in love with the app only because we really are missing out on the pacing and like the interaction with the teacher. Yeah. Yes. Even just like the segmentation, like the way the computer, like that, it just the voice and the pausing in it is I find it hard to like listen to and understand, and really versus like an actual human person if they were interacting and doing that with you.
Definitely. Sometimes it goes too fast for some of our students. Sometimes it goes too slow for some of our students. So I really like the binder set low tech materials and then supplementing with the app if needed for maybe some independent work or some that a paraprofessional can support. But I think there are some limitations with the app. I know that they are trying to gain information about what's working and not working with the app so that they can try to make modifications to it, but who knows when that would be rolling out.
One thing I was going to add on, though, is one case or instance where the app was helpful this year was for a teacher who has a really strong accent and wasn't pronouncing all of the words exactly in a way that our students might understand. So it was helpful to have the voice from the app for that case.
That's a good point. Yeah. But all of these programs have a lot of pros and cons to them, and you can have value. And we need to just kind of boil down of what are the skills we're trying to teach. We know from phonological awareness and phonics, the important skills to get to reading mastery. So whichever program we're using or whichever way we're targeting that, as long as we're targeting those skills, that's the key part. And yeah, we've started to recently work our kindergarten, first grade instruction for phonological awareness is the Haggerty program. So we've been working to try to figure out ways to adapt that to meet the needs of our students by taking principles of the all and kind of merging it into Haggerty. So it's a work in progress, as we're saying, trying to figure out the best way to meet the needs, because if we can get it to be paired with their gen ed curriculum, I think we'll have even more willingness to adopt it from our teachers and other educators.
Yeah, and that's where I just want to highlight again the collaboration, and the reason one of our goals for the session was to identify stakeholders to include, because as AT specialists and speech language pathologists, we don't know the curriculum, the gen ed curriculum, as well as other folks in the district, so really collaborating with other people in other roles is helpful for us to learn more about what is gen ed curriculum, what's the next step that we're trying to get our kids to. And it's also helpful for them to learn more about our students and some of their unique needs too. So if you would like to, you can feel free to either unmute or put in the chat, maybe what is your next step, or something that you would like to try to begin emergent literacy instruction, or perhaps to continue if you're already beginning. There's one idea in the chat that says, on my to-do list, to look at reading goals of AAC users across the district to get a big picture. Yes, that's a great next step.
I see also in the chat a little bit up, Kristen highlighted the SETC recorded book study on the Comprehensive Literacy for All book. Definitely check that out if you're interested in learning a little bit more about this.